I had only been at the hospital for less than 12 hours, and since the birth was complicated, I had to undergo an operation, and the doctors wanted to keep me hospitalized for at least a week.
What the hell are you still doing here? You were supposed to start your shift at 9 o'clock. This is not how you're going to progress in this company.
What are you doing here? I quit, in case you didn't notice.
There's no such thing as quitting. I've told you all 1,000 times. So get up from that bed and come with me. We have projects to finish in the office.
I'm not going anywhere. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not in a condition to do so. And if you want to fire me for it, go ahead. I quit anyway. The doctors asked my boss to leave, but it was obvious he wanted to have the last word and wouldn't easily accept that I had told him to go. As he saw it, he was doing me a favor by letting me be in the hospital at that moment. Hello, my name is Karen, and for the past few months I've been working at an interior design company. The job is what I've always dreamed of doing, and my colleagues are fantastic as well. If I had to complain about something, it would probably be the boss. He turned out to be quite a character, in the worst sense of the word. When people worked the required hours, even putting in some extra time for the benefit of the business, my boss was all smiles and compliments, pointing out that each of us was crucial for the company to keep running, and he was very happy to have us under his command. Now, if anyone made the slightest mistake, like printing a document double-sided instead of single-sided, his merciless fury was unleashed. All those compliments he once gave seemed like they never existed. When he got angry, he tended to yell, throw objects that got in his way, and call us everything from ungrateful to useless, making it very clear that if the company was still standing, it was because he was at the helm.
One of these days, the boss is going to get us in trouble.
I heard about Mark. Is he okay? I heard the last vase. The boss smashed, almost hit his head.
Oh yes, he's fine. Luckily, the vase only grazed him. I said that because there's going to be a labor inspection next week, and considering how the boss is, it wouldn't surprise me if it ended up in an interrogation.
As much as I'd like to see him have a hard time, I don't think that will happen. The boss is very good at keeping up appearances. And I was right because I had noticed that the boss did the same when clients came to the building, and he had to be at the forefront to attend to them. He made sure to be punctual where he was supposed to be, always greeting visitors with a smile and a kind remark. The compliments towards his employees would return, and if any employee made a mistake during that time, he would downplay it, assuring them that anyone could make a mistake and that it wasn't necessary to worry. It seemed like the boss had two opposite personalities. When the clients, or the inspection in this case, left, he would go back to being the same demon as always, and his kind phase on those days when he was in a good enough mood to appreciate others' efforts was something very sporadic. It might happen once every 3 weeks. Remembering his employees' past mistakes, he wouldn't hesitate to punish them harshly, as if instead of misplacing a report, they had deliberately set fire to his office.
And remember, in this company, taking time off for nonsense is not allowed. You have a few vacation days per year, as the law dictates. If you want to go fool around outside of those dates, don't bother coming back. And what if we're sick, or have to be absent due to an emergency? We can't plan illnesses. In that case, make sure you're on the brink of death because I'm not going to grant you the courtesy of paid leave for just a cold.
Well, if we're going to die, we won't need that money anyway, but it would be nice to be able to take leave even unpaid, in case of an emergency.
I said no emergencies. The day you signed the contract, you assured that you would live for and dedicate yourself to the company, making the necessary sacrifices. So no backing out, or I'll make sure you don't get hired anywhere else.
My boss was serious when he said he wouldn't accept the slightest lack of discipline when it came to showing up for work. And the other employees noticed it too. Every time someone needed to take days off for illness or to attend to a seriously ill family member, that person never returned to the office again. They were fired without further ado, as if it were normal not to accept that a worker might need more days off than those agreed upon in a contract. Injustices were commonplace, and it seemed my boss lacked the empathy needed to understand that people didn't take time off from their jobs for fun.
If they want to take leave for stress, they shouldn't come back. What's the point of being employed here in the first place if they can't handle anything? It's not just stress, it's also depression. It's necessary to take care of mental health. And how is that my problem? If they're sad, They should be sad at home and stop crying in my office. I'll prepare their severance package and they'll be done with a job they'll never get back.
I had been thinking about quitting for a while, and when I got pregnant, I thought that when I took maternity leave, it would be the perfect time to announce my resignation. Like many other colleagues who had gone through a similar situation or had seen my boss's ways when someone did something he simply didn't approve of, I didn't want to spend any more time in that company. I was just going to stick around long enough to earn some extra money until my baby was born. Right before the baby was born, when the appointed date to go to the hospital came, I would leave without looking back. I had even talked to human resources to let them know in advance that instead of taking leave, I would just quit then. Of course, I didn't mention any of this to my boss. I knew that if I even hinted that I was thinking of quitting, he would go ballistic and probably end up firing me on the spot. So the only thing he knew, up to the very end, when I had to take my leave to the hospital, was that I might have to take at least one day on leave. And of course, that was a lie. The truth was, I resigned before I gave birth. As usual, my clueless boss kept arguing until the end.
Don't even think that just because you're having a baby, you'll be able to take leave. We don't do things that way in my company.
But by law, I'm entitled to it.
I know what the law says, thank you very much, but I don't care. You have a commitment to the company, and it's enough that I let you go to the hospital the day the baby is born.
And no, I should thank you for allowing me to give birth in a more comfortable place than the office, with appropriate medical care. That comment made him furious once again. He didn't seem to realize that he could be reported if the authorities found out how he belittled his workers' problems and didn't grant them the necessary pay or vacations depending on the situation. For my part, I thought that when the time came for me to go to the hospital, there wouldn't be a problem. Because yes, my boss had threatened to fire me, but I was going to leave anyway. And it wasn't like he could show up at the hospital where I was giving birth to demand that I return to the office, right? Not only would that be terribly inappropriate, but it would make no sense. Besides, I had given sufficient notice for them to find a replacement. My conscience was clear. By the time I got to the hospital, my boss should have already taken notice of my resignation, since I left instructions for him to be informed by then. Therefore, I didn't think that just a few hours after giving birth, my boss would actually show up at my hospital to do exactly what I could only have imagined in my nightmares. I had only been at the hospital for less than 12 hours, and since the birth was complicated, I had to undergo an operation, and the doctors wanted to keep me hospitalized for at least a week.
What the hell are you still doing here? You were supposed to start your shift at 9 o'clock. This is not how you're going to progress in this company.
What are you doing here? I quit, in case you didn't notice.
There's no such thing as quitting. I've told you all 1,000 times. So get up from that bed and come with me. We have projects to finish in the office.
I'm not going anywhere. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not in a condition to do so. And if you want to fire me for it, go ahead. I quit anyway. The doctors asked my boss to leave, but it was obvious he wanted to have the last word and wouldn't easily accept that I had told him to go. As he saw it, he was doing me a favor by letting me be in the hospital at that moment. Therefore, the medical care I could receive also had to end precisely when he decided. My husband and baby didn't matter to him, and he let me know by yelling at me so that half the health center could hear the disturbances that were about to occur in that room. Maybe I could be fired, but my boss wouldn't tolerate the humiliation of being sent out by a mere employee. It didn't matter. I didn't work for him anymore. He still saw me that way. So he made himself heard in a very inappropriate way. So much so that several nurses had to come to throw him out. My boss started a physical fight with them during visiting hours, creating chaos. And while someone was busy calling the police, a team of doctors from a mental institution across the street had to come to the rescue, as they seemed to have detected erratic and violent behavior in my boss that deserved to be studied in some psychiatric ward. When the authorities arrived, they were undecided about what would be more appropriate, to put my boss in jail or in a psychiatric institution. In the end, as it couldn't be otherwise, my boss ended up in preventive detention. A few days later, a coworker called me.
Karen, we need your help.
If it's for work, I'm not coming back. I've already decided.
Oh no, it's not for work. Or it is, but we're not asking you to come back. You see, we've heard what the boss did. and several coworkers have decided to file a collective complaint so he pays for all the injustices he made us suffer. I was calling to see if you'd like to join and testify against him.
Of course, I wasn't going to say no to that. With the complaint filed and backed by more than 24 people, both current and former employees of the company, what could have been a fine and several months of community service for my boss ended up being a sentence of more than 10 years in prison for labor abuse and not granting his employees the rights they were legally entitled to. While in prison, my boss still didn't change. Unfortunately for him, he started bossing one of the inmates around, not knowing that the inmate was part of a dangerous gang. One day, the inmate had enough and my boss was beaten severely, resulting in one of his fingers being broken. The gang member sentence was extended because of that act. My ex-boss, Case, made the news, and my ex-boss's reputation was so tarnished that no one would want to hire him ever again, even when he will be out of jail. Even if he had done some good for the company, people only remembered the bad. And even those things that previously didn't seem so important or could have been seen as slip-ups now took on a more bitter tone. While my ex-boss served his well-deserved sentence and went viral on social media as one of the worst employers imaginable, I was finally able to live peacefully with my family, happy that justice had been served and also having received a good compensation that the court ordered my boss to pay all the victims of his outbursts. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. The days following Tasha's arrest were insane. My parents were suspiciously quiet, spending hours locked away in their study. They barely looked at me, and when they did, their faces were hard and twisted with resentment. I tried to convince myself that soon they'd finally see the truth for what it was. One night, as I passed by the study door, I heard them talking quietly. My name came up more than once, and the more I listened, the clearer it became that they were concocting a plan to pin Tasha's crimes on me.
We need to act fast. There must be a way to shift this back onto Sasha. If we can prove she planned it, maybe they'll go easy on Tasha.
We can say Sasha manipulated her, pushed her into it. No one would question it. She's been bitter and jealous of Tasha her whole life.
I felt sick. They were trying to rewrite the story to save her, planning to paint me as the villain in Tasha's game. My own parents were willing to have me locked away if it meant keeping her safe. Growing up as a twin can be horrible. People think you're the same, just two halves of a single unit. But that was never the case for me and Tasha. She had the charisma, the looks, the charm, everything our parents adored. And me? I was the quiet one, the plain one. It didn't help that Tasha was their favorite either. I suppose I should have seen it coming. My parents were the type who didn't think twice about putting her first, even if it meant forgetting I was there. If she was failing a class, they'd hire the best tutor. If she wanted to skip chores, they'd tell me to take over. I didn't hate her for it, or at least I tried not to. It wasn't her fault they worshipped the ground she walked on, but sometimes it felt like she was using it against me, like she enjoyed watching them take her side. The day it all started, I was coming home from work. I was feeling drained, ready to just collapse on my bed. But the moment I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. There was a strange, heavy silence in the house, and when I walked into the living room, I found my parents and Tasha sitting there.
Sasha, we need to talk.
My dad's tone was different. I mean, it was always stern like that, but there was an extra. My mom looked at me with that same disappointed look she always wore when she thought I'd done something wrong. And Tasha, well, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good.
We found out about what you did, Sasha. We're giving you a chance to come clean before we have to involve anyone else.
I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. What on earth were they talking about? I hadn't done anything. I spent most of my days working or reading in my room. I wasn't exactly living a double life. I don't understand. What did I supposedly do?
Tasha told us everything. We know you've been stealing money, using her name to get credit amounting to $20,000, and making fake investments. We found the documents, Sasha.
It was insane. I hadn't done any of those things, and yet, there they were, looking at me like I was some kind of criminal. I glanced over at Tasha and saw her smirking with a satisfied look. I didn't do any of that. I would never.
Oh, come on, Sasha. Just admit it. You've been jealous of me for years. You were always the quiet, overlooked one, and now you're trying to ruin my life because you can't stand that I'm better than you.
Her words stung, but not as much as the look of sheer disappointment on my parents' faces. They didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. They'd already decided I was guilty, all because Tasha had pointed her finger at me. My dad handed me a folder filled with documents, bank statements, credit card applications, even fake IDs with my name on them. I was speechless. Tasha had gone to extreme lengths to frame me, and it was working.
We're giving you one chance, Sasha. Come clean, and maybe we can work something out. But if you keep lying, we're going to have to take this to the authorities.
The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked at Tasha, hoping to see some hint of guilt, some indication that this was all just a horrible mistake. But she simply crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow, daring me to contradict her. At that moment, I knew there was no reasoning with them. They'd made up their minds, and they were going to believe whatever Tasha told them. And they will involve the cops. I was alone in this. I didn't do any of this. I don't know how you could believe I would, but my words fell on deaf ears. My parents shook their heads. Without a word, my dad turned his back on me, leading my mom and Tasha out of the room. I was left standing there, feeling the weight of their betrayal settle over me like a suffocating blanket. The next few weeks, my parents stopped speaking to me entirely, treating me like a stranger in my own home. Tasha, on the other hand, reveled in the attention. She played the role of the wounded victim perfectly, soaking up their sympathy and casting sly glances in my direction whenever they weren't looking. It was like she was daring me to fight back, knowing I had no way to prove my innocence. But then, something unexpected happened. A detective showed up at our door, asking questions about the fraudulent accounts and the money trail. Apparently, some discrepancies had been found in Tasha's story, and the bank had flagged the transactions as suspicious.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sasha was the one who handled all of that. I had nothing to do with it.
Her desperation was so visible, but the detective wasn't convinced. He had too many pieces of evidence that didn't align with her claims, too many details that didn't add up. And for the first time, I saw doubt cross my parents' faces.
Tasha, are you sure you're telling us everything?
Daddy, believe me. I swear it was all Sasha.
But it was too late. They took her for questioning, but she returned that day. However, after a few days of intense investigation, the detectives uncovered a mountain of evidence pointing to Tasha as the true mastermind behind the scheme. The officer traced the money and tracked what it was used for. He even had photos of Tasha at a nightclub buying expensive drinks, and managed to obtain our phone records, linking Tasha to addresses I hadn't even been to. She'd been using my name to open accounts and make investments, all while pretending to be the innocent victim. And now, her lies were starting to crumble. When the truth finally came out, my parents were horrified. They'd spent weeks condemning me, believing every word Tasha had said without question. And now, they had to face the fact that they'd been played for fools.
I don't understand. Tasha, how could you do this to us? You know we trusted you, sweetie.
It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought I could handle it. I didn't think anyone would actually believe Sasha was capable of it.
Her excuses sounded hollow, even to her. I expected an apology from my parents. They'd been so quick to blame me, so eager to protect her, and now they were paying the price for their blind loyalty. However, when I looked at them, I saw that they had pity in their eyes for her. My mom was even crying. As soon as the police took Tasha into custody, I thought things would finally be over. Even though my parents didn't apologize to me, I decided to forgive them, thinking they would eventually come around. But my parents weren't done. Their disappointment and pity for Tasha had quickly turned into a desperation to shield her, as if protecting her could erase the shame they felt. They were always staring at me coldly, as if I'd somehow pushed Tasha into that mess. I soon got to know that they were determined to save her at any cost, even if it meant sacrificing me again. The days following Tasha's arrest were insane. My parents were suspiciously quiet, spending hours locked away in their study. They barely looked at me, and when they did, their faces were hard and twisted with resentment. I tried to convince myself that soon, they'd finally see the truth for what it was. One night, As I passed by the study door, I heard them talking quietly. My name came up more than once, and the more I listened, the clearer it became that they were concocting a plan to pin Tasha's crimes on me.
We need to act fast. There must be a way to shift this back onto Sasha. If we can prove she planned it, maybe they'll go easy on Tasha.
We can say Sasha manipulated her, pushed her into it. No one would question it. She's been bitter and jealous of Tasha her whole life.
I felt sick. They were trying to rewrite the story to save her, planning to paint me as the villain in Tasha's game. My own parents were willing to have me locked away if it meant keeping her safe. For days, I lived in fear, wondering when they'd try to make their move. I overheard them calling the police station, hinting at new evidence and making subtle implications that they believed I was the real culprit. I stayed quiet, but I knew I had to do something to protect myself. Finally, I took a step that felt as desperate as it was necessary. I went to the detective handling Tasha's case and told him everything I'd overheard.
Thank you, Sasha. We'll keep this in mind.
After that, I could only wait. I wasn't sure if the detective believed me or if he thought I was grasping at straws, but I hoped my story was enough to protect me. A few days passed, and I heard nothing until the night I heard my parents' voices raised in anger. It was close to midnight when I heard a loud knock at the front door, followed by voices demanding my parents come outside. I crept downstairs and watched as two officers entered. They had paperwork, something official, and before I knew it, they were leading my parents out in handcuffs.
This is a mistake. You can't do this. You're arresting the wrong people.
We have evidence suggesting you attempted to obstruct justice and falsify information to protect your daughter. You'll have a chance to explain yourselves, but for now, you're coming with us.
My parents fought against their arrest, throwing accusations at me as the officers led them to the door.
Sasha, how could you? You're doing this to us after everything we've done for you?
I was in tears while they were being taken away. The next day, when I went to the police station, I discovered what my parents had done. Apparently, they forged voice notes and documents of me manipulating Tasha into doing what she did and sent it to the cops. It was all so stupid. Their plan to make me face punishment for Tasha's crime was so whack despite all the hours they spent planning. Tasha was just as stupid as them. I nearly laughed when I heard it. The signature they even forged didn't look similar to mine. They were really stupid. I requested to see them and they couldn't even stare at me. They were too embarrassed. My parents faced charges for attempting to tamper with a police investigation, and Tasha's case only grew stronger with the new evidence against them. They'd tried to bend the truth too far, and now it was finally breaking under the weight of their lies. They were all found guilty, Tasha for fraud, and my parents for obstruction of justice. When the verdict was read, my parents barely glanced my way. I wanted to believe that they were simply consumed with their own regret. But I no longer cared. For the first time, I felt free. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale with shock and shame. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for them, to reach out and offer some kind of forgiveness. But after everything they'd put me through, I knew I couldn't. They'd chosen their favorite and they'd paid the price for it. After that, I started to rebuild my life. I moved out of the house, cut ties with anyone who had believed Tasha's lies, and focused on creating a future that was free from their influence. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the loneliness felt overwhelming. But I knew I was better off without them. Years later, I heard that Tasha had been released from prison. She tried to reach out to me, begging for forgiveness and help because she was broke, homeless, and miserable. But I ignored her calls. I'd spent too long living in her shadow, and I wasn't about to let her drag me back into her chaos. I later heard she was arrested alongside a notorious gang member, and drugs were found in their basement, so she was taken to prison again. As for my parents, they never fully recovered from the scandal. Their reputation was in ruins, and they spent the rest of their lives haunted by the choices they'd made. They tried to make amends, to reach out and apologize, but it was too late. When they got out, no one was willing to hire them, and the bank had sold their house due to missed payments. My parents ended up working as janitors and living in a small apartment. I'd moved on. I was no longer just Tasha's twin, or their quiet daughter who always faded into the background. I was my own person, and I was finally free to live my life on my own terms. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
while my own accomplishments were often overshadowed and overlooked. James, why can't you be more like Ella? Look at her making us proud. I'm disappointed in you. Every time I made a mistake, or even stumbled through a spelling test, my father would lament about how much of a dumbass I was. Ella always seemed to be floating in her greatness. One day, Ella stole Mom's car and went for a ride. She had a minor accident and broke the car's front light. When our parents returned, she pretended to be ill and told them that I had taken the car for a joyride. Without hesitation, Dad slapped me and grounded me for a week. From then on, I was given most of the chores at home, like mowing the lawn and cleaning, while Ella would be on her phone, chatting with her friends. As the years passed, our relationship shifted from sibling friendship to a fierce rivalry. From the day Ella was born, my world began to revolve around her, and I quickly realized I was in for a lifetime of competition. My name's James, and this is my story. As a child, I didn't fully understand it, but my parents made it clear that my little sister was their golden child. Even as infants, they would snap countless pictures of her, while I lingered quietly in the background, feeling like a ghost in my own home.
Look at her smile. Isn't she the cutest thing?
I didn't ask for much. All I wanted was just a little acknowledgement, a pat on the back, but that seemed to be reserved solely for Ella. It was like living in the shadow of a bright light, and as we grew older, that shadow only got bigger. In elementary school, Ella quickly became known as a genius. My parents made sure she was in the same class as me. She learned to read before most of our classmates and picked up musical instruments with a skill that astonished everyone. My parents paraded her achievements around, boasting to friends and family, while my own accomplishments were often overshadowed and overlooked. James, why can't you be more like Ella? Look at her making us proud. I'm disappointed in you. Every time I made a mistake, or even stumbled through a spelling test, my father would lament about how much of a dumbass I was. Ella always seemed to be floating in her greatness. One day, Ella stole Mom's car and went for a ride. She had a minor accident and broke the car's front light. When our parents returned, she pretended to be ill and told them that I had taken the car for a joyride. Without hesitation, Dad slapped me and grounded me for a week. From then on, I was given most of the chores at home, like mowing the lawn and cleaning, while Ella would be on her phone, chatting with her friends. As the years passed, our relationship shifted from sibling friendship to a fierce rivalry. Every school play, art competition, and academic challenge morphed into a battleground. Ella was always watching and waiting for the moment to one-up me. It became a constant game of one-upmanship that I never signed up for. One day, I announced that I was going to be the school's president. I was proud of my decision to run, and hoped my parents would be too. However, the reverse was the case.
Oh, that's nice, James. But you know Ella would make a great president too, don't you?
Her words felt like a slap to my face. It didn't matter that I had a good chance. Ella had somehow managed to try to steal the spotlight yet again. Sure enough, she signed up to run against me, launching her own campaign filled with slogans and promises that seemed to outshine my own. I cried my eyes out because I knew she'd win. Ella had a knack for manipulating situations to her advantage. I remember vividly the time I was selected for a special science project. I poured my heart into it, working tirelessly, only to find Ella showing up with a more elaborate display on the day of the fair. Well, despite the situation, I managed to maintain decent grades and keep my head above water. But as we entered senior high school, the favoritism towards Ella grew stronger. She became the star athlete, leading her teams to victory, while my modest accomplishments felt less and less significant in comparison. Family gatherings became unbearable. My parents gushed over her athletic achievements, celebrating every win while I sat quietly, pretending not to notice. I wanted to shout, to demand attention, but it felt futile. Did you see Ella score the winning goal last week? What a star! She's my true blood, always winning.
She's my true blood too.
Everyone laughed at their little argument. Ella thrived on the attention, soaking up every bit of praise like a sponge. It felt as though no matter what I did, I would always remain in her shadow. The competition became my new normal. Every day felt like a fight for validation and recognition. As college approached, I clung to the hope that I could finally break free from the cycle of rivalry. I pursued a degree in political science, dreaming of a career in public service where I could make a real difference. But of course, Ella had her own plans. She went for the same degree and announced her intentions to run for local office immediately after I did.
Oh, James, maybe you should just let Ella take this one. She has a real talent for this. You know it suits her more than you. Oh dear, I can't even understand why you went for politics.
It felt suffocating. Our political ambitions clashed in a way that was both expected and shocking. Ella and I began campaigning for the same position. The stakes felt higher than ever. I poured my heart into my campaign with a determination I had never known before, hoping to outshine her once and for all. Ella, however, was not one to back down easily. She unleashed a ruthless side I had never seen before. She spread rumors about my character, claiming I was dishonest and untrustworthy. What kind of person does that? She's so desperate to beat you. Is she even your true sister? That's definitely not how a real sister behaves. She's so unfair. No matter how hard I fought back, Ella continued her onslaught. She had our parents behind her, cheering her on and fueling her fire. It felt like the entire family had turned against me, leaving me to fight alone in a battle I had never wanted. Despite the obstacles, I refused to give up. I hosted community events, engaged with voters, and made it clear that I was committed to making real change in our town. But Ella's dark tactics reached new heights. One day, I discovered her plan to sabotage my fundraising event. I had spent weeks organizing it, and when I showed up, I found my supplies destroyed and my guests turned away. Ella stood at the entrance, smirking as she reveled in my failure. Did you do this?
Who, me? Why would you ask me that? I just came to support the community and my lovely elder brother.
It was such an obvious lie. Her eyes said it all. But how could I hold her responsible when she was so smooth with it and made it impossible to find any evidence against her? It became apparent that she was willing to do whatever it took to win, even if it meant tearing me down. The rivalry had grown toxic. Ella's last-ditch effort to eliminate me was to hire someone to plant drugs in my car, hoping for my arrest. I had no idea, of course. I was on my way to where I'd be giving my campaign speech when the police pulled me over. Drugs were found in your vehicle. Care to explain that? I was arrested. Thankfully, the news didn't go round, and I didn't have to spend more than a night at the station because the man she hired to plant the drugs in my car decided to snitch on her. Apparently, Ella was too stingy to pay him completely and called his threat to expose her a bluff. I was immediately released after he provided evidence of his claims. The scandal that followed was overwhelming. The news spread like wildfire, painting Ella and my parents in the worst light imaginable. Apparently, my parents and Ella had conspired to sabotage me. It didn't take long before they were arrested, handcuffed, and led away, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my campaign. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was stepping into the light, free from the shackles of my family's favoritism. With my parents and sister gone, I won the election for city council, a position I had long dreamed of. I made changes that resonated with the community and gave back in ways that truly mattered. 5 years passed, and I continued to grow in my political career. I became a respected voice in our town, advocating for change and earning the trust of the people. I even married a wonderful woman named Sarah, and together we welcomed 2 beautiful children into the world. Life was good, and I felt proud of what I had built. But then came the day when my parents and Ella were released from prison. I received a call from my mother.
James, we need your help. We've lost everything. We have no one to turn to now. Please help us.
You need my help now? Wow, you should have thought about that before you plotted against me. You don't deserve my help. I owe you nothing. But we're family. Don't be ridiculous. You can't just turn your back on us. That was the moment I realized that they still thought they had a right to my life and my success. I was furious. I remembered all the years of favoritism, manipulation, and betrayal. I built my life from the ground up while you tore each other down. You think I owe you something after everything you've done. You had your chance, and you threw it away. Deal with your problems yourself. I hung up the phone. I had thought it was over, but they had become increasingly desperate to reconnect with me, and it quickly morphed into an obsession. They began showing up uninvited at events I organized, lingering outside the doors, watching me like hawks. There was no doubt that they were stalking me. Their messages flooded my phone, apologies, pleas for forgiveness, and reminders of our shared blood. At first, I tried to ignore them, but their persistence was maddening. They left notes on my car, calling me ungrateful, demanding to know why I wouldn't just help them get back on their feet. Things escalated one fateful evening when my children and I were playing in the backyard. I spotted my father hiding near the edge of the trees. I immediately took my kids, rushed inside, and locked the door. I couldn't believe they had the audacity to show up at my home. The next day, I received a call from my mother.
James, if you don't help us, you'll regret it. We know where your children are, and we know where your wife works.
I was afraid for my wife and children's safety. I rushed to the police station to report the threats and immediately filed for a restraining order. However, my family broke the terms repeatedly, showing up at events, trying to get my attention. Their behavior became bolder and more reckless. They would stand outside my office waiting for me. They would run after my car, yelling at me. One night, I was alone in my living room when I began hearing noises. I checked from my window and saw my security guards beating up some people. I immediately went outside to check, only to see Ella and my parents. Apparently, they'd tried to break in my house, but my security guards caught them. The guards had mistook them for robbers and beat them up. I let them beat my parents and Ella until they could barely move before I called the police. The police arrived within minutes. I was so relieved as I watched them handcuff my parents and Ella, pushing and treating them like the criminal they were. They were dragged out of my building because they could barely walk. The next day, I was at the station to press charges. This time, they would face real consequences for their actions. Since the previous 5-year jail term wasn't enough to teach them a lesson, I hoped they would get a longer one. And of course, 1 month later, they each got 10 years imprisonment for their continuous harassment, breaking into my house, stalking me, and disobeying the terms in the restraining order. The news relieved me. It was hard to admit, but I enjoyed seeing them fall from grass to an even messier grass again. They had turned their lives into a mess, and I felt zero guilt for putting them in their places. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
There weren't much friends, as we both had a very small circle. When it came to the moment the priest asked if anyone opposed us from getting married, Jeffrey's sister suddenly walked in. Everyone turned to her, but her eyes were on me as she advanced toward me. Her mom tried to stop her, but she roughly pushed the woman, causing her to fall. I immediately knew something was wrong. I didn't take my gaze off her. As she got closer to me, I noticed she pulled out a small jar from her pocket. Jeffrey tried to go to her, but I held him back. In a swift moment, as she threw the content of the jar toward my direction, I pushed Jeffrey, and we both landed on the floor, the content only touching a small part of my leg. It burned me so much that I had to immediately be rushed to the hospital by our friends. It was acid. Jeffrey tried to catch her, but she was fast. She ran to a getaway car waiting for her and sped off. Unfortunately, she crashed a few minutes later into a police car. Hi, I'm Tina George. I'm 28 years old, a mother of 2, and living happily with my husband, Jeffrey. I met Jeffrey during my lowest time. I'd just lost my job, my rent was close to expiring, and I was running out of money. We first met during an interview I went for in the company where he worked as the head of the marketing department. I'd interviewed to occupy the post of a marketer, and he thought I was the best of all candidates. As you might have guessed, I was employed immediately. He did help me a lot. I became one of his best workers in less than 2 weeks, as I was very hardworking and dedicated. Somehow we extended into our private lives, and soon our friendship extended into a relationship after we both confessed our feelings to each other. By then, Jeffrey had started an online marketing company, but he didn't quit his job. Of course, I assisted him with it. We both put in equal work to push the company. Nearly 2 years later, we'd gotten to a satisfactory stage. We still continued working at the company, as we didn't want to focus on just one income stream. One day, Jeffrey told me he had a surprise for me. I love surprises, so I was elated to hear that and grew so curious as to what the surprise was. Eventually, the day came and we left together. He blindfolded me once we were close to the place. He helped me out of the car and led me into a place. When he opened my eyes, my jaw fell. In front of me stood a huge ongoing mansion. From the look of it, I could already tell it was going to be heavenly. As I turned to ask for clarification of who owned it, I met Jeffrey on one knee, holding a glittering silver ring out to me. He proposed to me. I had tears in my eyes as I accepted, and he slid the ring into my finger. I'd thought my life would go smoothly from there until I got introduced to his family.
I was going to bring her a long time ago, but I wanted to be sure about what I'm feeling before doing that. This is Tina, the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Now, before our visit, I was nervous. I hadn't expected them to not like me, because I'm very likable. I was simply nervous as anyone would be for their first visit to their soon-to-be in-laws' house. Their reaction to his words was totally unexpected. They appeared shocked, especially his father and younger sister.
What about Stacy? We thought you two had something going on.
I had no idea who Stacy was. I turned to Jeffrey for an explanation, and he gave me a look of assurance.
Well, you're very wrong. Stacy and I were never anything more than friends. Also, if you're not aware, we don't speak anymore. She has a boyfriend now, and he's against her having a male best friend.
From his explanation, I understood that she was his best friend, and his family had thought they had something going on. His parents seemed to be calm after his explanation, but not his sister.
You could have settled for someone prettier than Stacy, not just an average girl.
She said that to my freaking face. Shocked was an exaggeration. I was more than shocked. How could she be so insensitive? If I wasn't pretty, I'd have felt bad about what she said. But I was. I'm very aware of how pretty I am. Her parents disagreed with her and also asked what work I was doing, and I explained to them that Jeffrey and I run his company, and we also work in the same department at our first workplace.
I guess you seduced my brother then.
Excuse me?
I mean, you both work in the same company. My brother is the head of the marketing team and also owns a company. I can understand that you're a gold digger, so you don't have to pretend.
I'm not going to sit here and watch you speak to her like that. Are you crazy?
What? Will you fight me because of this gold digger?
I also wasn't one to sit and be insulted for doing nothing. Well, dearest, if you must know, I was the best candidate in the interview I attended at the company. Your brother and I didn't know each other then. He was immensely impressed with me. And his company? We both started it together, darling, and we're currently running it together. There's no such thing as seduction or gold digging between us, understood? Jeffrey and his parents were obviously impressed with how I stood up for myself, but I could see her eyes spitting venom at me. She was seething with anger where she sat. After then, she didn't speak again until I left, but I knew she developed a deep hatred for me since then. 2 days after we left, it was a Saturday, and I suddenly heard my doorbell ring. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I couldn't help but wonder who the visitor was. When I got to the door, I was shocked to see Jeffrey's sister. "What the hell are you doing here?" She brushed me aside without a word and walked in uninvited. I followed her, asking what she wanted.
Did my brother get you this house?
I found it funny and laughed. I work for my money and pay my bills myself. I rented this apartment with my money, okay?
Oh, you liar! I wonder what my brother saw in a stupid gold digger like you.
Seriously, what's your deal with me? Why do you hate me?
I hate you because I know you're only here for my brother's money. People like you will only make him forget his family. If you refuse to leave my brother, then I'm going to make him leave you. Gold digger.
I immediately called Jeffrey and told him about his sister's visit and threats. He apologized and promised to reprimand her. I guess he did because the next day, she was at my house, fuming.
You'll hate yourself by the time I'm done with you, Tina. Mark my words, I won't allow you to destroy our family. Since you started dating my brother, he doesn't give me money like he used to. You will regret being with him, trust me.
I tried to explain to her that I had no such intention, but she refused to listen and stormed out. Once when I had a meeting with a man who Jeffrey and I wanted to convince to invest in our company, Tina followed me. Of course, without my knowledge, I'd just gotten home after the meeting when I got a call from Jeffrey. He was laughing so much that I was confused about what was happening. Eventually, he explained to me that someone had caught Tina taking pictures of us and sent him the picture. Even more, Tina also sent him the pictures and told him I was cheating on him. Jeffrey video called her and put me on the call. We embarrassed her so much that she left in so much anger and teary eyes. I'd thought the embarrassment would finally make her stop, but it didn't. 2 weeks later, she stormed my house with her friends. What are you all doing here?
We're here to destroy you before you destroy our friend's family.
They pounced on me and began hitting me. I couldn't fight back because there were over 5 girls. By the time they were done, I was badly injured. I only managed to call Jeffrey before I fainted. He quickly rushed over and took me to the hospital. When I told him and his parents about their daughter being behind it, they were livid. Her father promised to teach her a bitter lesson, and Jeffrey was about to involve the police. But I stopped them. I was going to speak to her myself and explain to her that I loved her brother, and wasn't after his money, nor trying to destroy their family. However, she never showed up. No one saw her after what she did to me.
She knows she was wrong, and that's why she ran away.
We decided to leave her to herself. According to her parents, she'd caused problems for them since she was little, and they were tired already. They were even happy that she ran away. Our wedding preparation started. Throughout the 1 month we used in setting up everything, including where we'd have our honeymoon, Jeffrey's sister didn't show up. Eventually, 2 months later, it was finally our wedding day. There weren't much friends, as we both had a very small circle. When it came to the moment, the priest asked if anyone opposed us from getting married. Jeffrey's sister suddenly walked in. Everyone turned to her, but her eyes were on me as she advanced toward me. Her mom tried to stop her, but she roughly pushed the woman, causing her to fall. I immediately knew something was wrong. I didn't take my gaze off her. As she got closer to me, I noticed she pulled out a small jar from her pocket. Jeffrey tried to go to her, but I held him back. In a swift moment, as she threw the content of the jar toward my direction, I pushed Jeffrey, and we both landed on the floor, the content only touching a small part of my leg. It burned me so much that I had to immediately be rushed to the hospital by our friends. It was acid. Jeffrey tried to catch her, but she was fast. She ran to a getaway car waiting for her and sped off. Unfortunately, she crashed a few minutes later into a police car. She and her friends were immediately arrested, while I got treated. My wedding was ruined because of her. At the station, she tried to deny doing anything, but the priest told them the church had a CCTV camera. The footage was checked, and that served as evidence. While I was still at the hospital, Jeffrey retrieved the footage from when she brought her friends to my house to beat me up and presented it to the cops. Unknown to me, he also took pictures of me at the hospital after the assault. He gave that too to the police. The pictures of me and our client, which she sent to him, he also presented it to them and told them she'd been stalking me. There were too many accusations against her. She was immediately charged to court. I begged Jeffrey to withdraw the case, since she was his sister, but he refused.
She's my sister, but you're my wife. The woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. The one who's going to give me children. I treasure you so much and would never let anyone harm you, no matter who it is.
I tried to talk to his parents too, but they also refused. According to them, I'd become a part of their family, and they'd protect me the same way they'd protect their biological child. They needed her to be taught a lesson, as she'd troubled them too much. Eventually, she was sentenced to jail to serve a 3-year term for physical abuse and attempted murder. She was targeting my face with the acid. She was also found with a lighter, which meant she also planned to set me on fire. I was shocked. Her friends were charged and got 2 years each. After I was discharged from the hospital, we had our wedding again. I did visit her once, and she didn't seem remorseful. In fact, she boldly told me she still hated me and would repeat her actions if she had a chance. Well, hearing that made me extremely pissed off. To pacify myself, I paid some of the wardens to get other prisoners to torture her for 2 weeks. On my next visit, she had bruises all over her body, left cheek and right eye swollen, and had to limp while walking. I couldn't hold my laughter. Before leaving, I paid for another round of torture. I didn't go too far, did I?
He sentenced him to 20 years in prison. The judge had even asked my mother and I if we thought that Liam should have leniency and should be shown mercy. I can still remember my mother sneering.
No, Your Honor. That monster is no longer my son. He deserves no compassion at all.
Her voice dripped with venom, and I felt pride in knowing that she had finally seen the truth. After that, Liam was hauled away to prison in a wheelchair. Hi, my name is Jamie, and I always knew I was the outcast in my own family. My older brother Liam was the star, the favorite, who could do no wrong in the eyes of my parents. He was 3 years older than me, tall, athletic, and charming, the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately capture everyone's attention. He was perfect in their eyes, but to me, he was spoiled and arrogant, a tyrant who ruled our house. Mom and Dad never saw how Liam treated me, the way he belittled me when no one else was around, or how he would manipulate situations to make himself look good while making me seem like the screw-up. It was always my fault, even when it wasn't. Why can't you be more like Liam? Would you please stop saying that every day? I'm trying my best, Dad. You know that he isn't actually perfect. Well, his good grades and all his trophies say otherwise. My parents would say such things often, usually after Liam had convinced them that I was to blame for something that had gone wrong, something that he usually had done. Sadly, they believed him over me.
Liam wouldn't act like this, Jamie. Why do you always have to be so difficult?
I'd stopped fighting back years ago. After all, what was the point? No matter what I did, it was never good enough. Liam was the golden child, and I was the failure. That's just how it was. I remember one afternoon, about a year ago, when everything started to unravel. Liam had just gotten his driver's license, and Dad had bought him a brand new car. Not just any car either, a sleek black sports car that Liam had been begging for. I was 16 at the time, and barely able to ride my old bike without getting side eyes from Dad for not looking like a man. But Liam? He got everything handed to him. Let's go for a drive, Jamie. Come on, you'll like it. I didn't want to go. The last thing I wanted was to spend more time with him, but refusing would have meant more trouble for me later. So, I got in the car. We drove through town, Liam showing off, speeding down narrow streets while blasting the stereo. I held onto the seat, my knuckles white, my stomach churning. Relax, Jamie. You're such a baby. Just enjoy the ride. I didn't say anything, just stared out the window and wished I was anywhere else. That was the way it always was with Liam. He got to have fun, and I was left in his shadow, just trying to stay out of the way. Later that evening, though, things took a real turn for the worst. We were sitting at the dinner table, Mom, Dad, Liam, and I. It was supposed to be a regular family dinner, but somehow it always turned into a showcase of Liam's accomplishments.
Did you hear? Liam got an A on his physics exam. His teacher says he's one of the brightest students she's ever had.
That's my boy, always making us proud. You'll be going places, Liam, I know it. I forced myself to chew the dry chicken on my plate, staring at the tablecloth to avoid their eyes.
What about you, Jamie? Are you even trying in school?
I'm doing fine. Fine isn't good enough. You're wasting your potential. You could learn a thing or two from Liam. Liam smirked across the table, and I knew he was enjoying every second of it. But then things took a turn, as they sometimes did when Liam got bored. He liked to push things just far enough to get a reaction. Actually, Dad, Jamie's not doing so well in school. I heard he's been skipping classes.
What? Is that true?
I shook my head, trying to defend myself, but Liam kept going. Yeah, one of his teachers mentioned it to me. Said he's been falling behind. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. Damn it, Jamie. You're going to ruin your life. Do you think we'll let you sit around and do nothing while Liam is out there making something of himself? I haven't been skipping classes, I swear. Of course, they didn't believe me, and they spent the next few hours yelling at me. Liam was smiling the entire time, clearly enjoying the trauma he was causing me. I was so done with my parents, but with what happened later, I regret not trying harder to get them to see me as anything but a screw-up. There wasn't much that Liam couldn't pass off onto me. There was even the time that our mother found drugs in Liam's room, and he somehow convinced them that they were mine.
Liam, sweetie, what are these doing here?
Mom, those aren't mine. They must be Jamie's. I don't know why he would hide them in my room.
Jamie! I wish I could say that I was surprised by this. Just wait till your father gets home. You are in big trouble.
Are you kidding me? They aren't mine. They are literally in Liam's room, hidden in his dresser. Why on earth are you believing him? But that's how it always went. After that, I wasn't allowed to leave the house for months except to go to school. Eventually, though, things got back to normal. Or at least, the terrible kind of normal that my family was capable of. Then it happened. The night that changed everything. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. Mom and Dad were going out for dinner, leaving Liam and me at home. I was in my room, trying to avoid Liam as usual, when I heard him knocking on the door. Jamie, I need a favor. What? What could you possibly want from me? I need you to distract Mom and Dad for me when they get home. Why? Because I'm bored, and I want to go for a joyride. They told you not to drive it tonight and to stay home with me. They think I'll get up to no good if you aren't here since you convinced them that I'm the screw-up. I know, genius. That's why I need you to cover for me. Just tell them I was here the whole time. I'll be back before they even know it. No way. I'm not lying for you. Liam's expression darkened, and he raised his fists at me in a threatening manner. Don't be such a little rat, Jamie. You owe me. You know they'll blame you for something sooner or later. If you help me out like this, then I'll get them to go easy on you. You do me a favor, and I'll do one for you. I knew he was lying. There was no way that he would ever come to my aid, but I also knew that he was going to do whatever he wanted to, whether I agreed or not. And so, I shrugged and just turned on the television and started watching a movie. The next part is still a blur to me, even now. Liam took the car, speeding off into the night. After some time, our mom came home earlier than expected, and within minutes, the phone rang. I heard my mother's voice, high-pitched and panicked.
What? No, that can't be right. He's supposed to be at home. He wouldn't...
Then she came rushing upstairs and demanded I tell her where Liam was. I refused to lie for him, so I told her that he had left and went for a joyride. She screamed at the top of her lungs in pain, and then told me that both Liam and our father had been in an accident. Apparently, our father was on his way home as well, when Liam ran through a stop sign and slammed into him, causing both their cars to roll hundreds of feet down the road. Paramedics arrived as quickly as they could, but our father was too badly injured, and he died before they could help him. Liam was much luckier, and while he lost both of his legs, he survived the crash. My mother was enraged, and she refused to speak to Liam when she went to see him in the hospital. Minutes after we arrived, some police came in and informed my mom that drugs had been found in Liam's system, and that they felt that the accident was in large part to him being impaired and driving dangerously. My mother then looked at Liam, and then at me. It was the first time that she truly apologized to me. It felt like such a relief that she had finally realized the truth about Liam and I, and she swore that she would never take Liam's word over mine ever again. For weeks after the funeral, I stayed quiet. Liam was still in the hospital, facing charges for reckless driving and vehicular manslaughter, on top of possession of an illegal substance. Neither my mother or I went to visit him even once. As far as she was concerned, he was dead to her as well. But I couldn't stop thinking about that night. How it was all Liam's fault. How his selfishness, his arrogance, had cost us everything. And then I found it. His belongings were delivered to the house, and among them, I found his phone. On it was a text from the night of the accident. He had messaged one of his friends, joking about how fast he was going and how stupid our parents were for buying him such a powerful car. Liam had even messaged that he was going to play chicken with an oncoming car. I had heard him mention this game of his before. He would drive towards an oncoming car and force them to swerve off the road or have a head-on collision with him. I could only assume that it was the drugs that made him so bold and careless. Of course, this meant that it wasn't exactly an accident. He had endangered our father's life on purpose. The crash, the death, all of it. It was because Liam had been selfish and just plain reckless. I showed my mother the messages, and together we went to the police and showed them everything. With this new information, they built an airtight case against Liam, and as soon as he was released from the hospital, he went straight to jail where he waited until his trial date. The judge saw the messages, and along with the knowledge that Liam was high at the time as well, he sentenced him to 20 years in prison. The judge had even asked my mother and I if we thought that Liam should have leniency and should be shown mercy. I can still remember my mother sneering.
No, Your Honor. That monster is no longer my son. He deserves no compassion at all.
Her voice dripped with venom, and I felt pride in knowing that she had finally seen the truth. After that, Liam was hauled away to prison in a wheelchair. He would write us letters fairly often, but we wouldn't even read them, and we never visited him once. The only good news I do have is that after the whole ordeal, that my mother and I grew very close. She finally saw me for the good, well-rounded boy that I was, and that she had been blinded by Liam into seeing me as something I wasn't. It's a shame that it took such a terrible event for us to finally grow close, but I am very grateful for it. Although if I could go back in time, I would happily trade Liam's life for my father's. And no amount of time in prison can ever undo the horrible mistake that he made. I once heard that my father's ghost tormented Liam in prison. I hope that is true. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.